The glass doors of Knight & Co. look like a mirror when the sun hits them. Every morning they throw my reflection back at me. Today they show a woman in a navy blazer that needed a better steam. A woman with sleep marks on her cheekbones and a paper envelope clutched so tightly her knuckles have gone white. I stand there a second longer than I should, holding my breath like, if I do not breathe, the day will not start. Then I push through and the lobby swallows me whole. People move around me with the brisk purpose of a hive. Lanyards flash, heels click, to voice gloss across marble. I used to love that rhythm. I used to think being part of a machine meant I was going somewhere. 3 years later, I am just tired. Tired enough to miss birthdays and Sunday dinners. Tired enough to measure my life by the blue glow of slides on a screen and the ache in the back of my eyes. Tired enough to write a letter and put it in this envelope and tell myself this is the last time I will ride the elevator to the executive floor. The elevator hums up and my stomach hums with it. I keep the envelope pressed to my side like a shield. When the doors part, the lights are too bright and the carpet is too soft and everything smells faintly like lemon cleaner and old coffee. I pass the framed photos of awards and press features. He is, in most of them, Ethan Knight, founder, CEO, the man who made this company out of thin air and iron will. He has the kind of face that looks carved when he does not smile, which is almost always, people say he is ruthless. People say he demands perfection. People are not wrong. I stop outside his office and lift my hand to knock. My knuckles hesitate an inch from the wood. I tell myself to be simple. In, out. Done. No quiver. No apology. No last-minute softening. I knock twice and a voice answers from inside. Calm and clipped. Come in. The room is all glass and city and hard edges. He sits behind his desk with his sleeves rolled to his forearms, eyes on the screen, fingers moving fast. He does not look up. He never does at first. It is a power play I used to ignore and later resented. I clear my throat. Mr. Knight, I need to speak with you. One moment. He says, still typing. My palm grows damp around the paper cup of lukewarm coffee I grabbed and forgot to drink. My heart thuds in a rhythm that does not match the clock on the wall. The desk between us looks like a border. I imagine myself crossing it, dropping the envelope, saying the words, walking out lighter than air. Simple, clean. I have rehearsed it 100 times in my head. But thoughts have a way of melting when you are close enough to see the flecks of steel in your boss' eyes. He finally stops and looks at me. His gaze is cool, steady, assessing. It slides to the envelope. Back to my face, Emma. He says, what is it? The way he says my name is too careful, like he is testing it for the first time. I take a step forward and lay the envelope on the desk. My hand trembles. I do not want it to, but it does. I am resigning. I say, effective immediately. For a breath, the room is silent, like it has swallowed sound. Surprise flickers across his face and disappears so fast I almost think I imagined it. He leans back, takes the envelope, reads the single page I sweated over last night, and sets it down with a precision that makes me want to scream. This is unexpected. He says, is it? I ask, and the word tastes bitter, because I have been running on fumes for months, and that felt pretty obvious from where I stand. But maybe exhaustion does not carry past this desk. He studies me in that focused way of the way he studies trends and numbers and anything he plans to bend to his will. I care about your work. He says, the work? I repeat, not me. The work, it comes out sharper than I planned. And once it is out, more follows. The late nights, the canceled plans. The way excellence here is the baseline and still somehow not enough. I say I am tired of being a ghost who sends perfect decks at midnight and hears nothing but silence. I say I am done. My voice cracks on the last word. And I hate that it does. If you felt this way, you should have said something. He says, I laugh without humor, with respect. I say, you do not exactly invite conversation. It is like trying to speak to a locked door. His jaw tightens. A line appears between his brows. He stands, and the air shifts. I do not step back. I should, maybe, but I am too angry, or too brave, or too close to the end to care. What am I to you? I ask, another cog, another pair of hands that can type faster when you do not look at them. That is not true. He says, quietly, then what am I? The question hangs between us. He opens his mouth and then closes it again. For the first time since I met him, he looks less than certain. It should make me feel triumphant. It makes me feel tired. I turn toward the door. Emma, he says, and my name lands different this time. Softer. Wait. No one tells me to wait and has me listen. Somehow he does. My hand rests on the knob. I look back and he is no longer behind the fortress of his desk. He has come around to my side. The space shrinking until I can see the pale crescent of an old scar on his wrist, and the way his eyes are not just steel but silver with something like fear. Please do not go. He says, please is a word I have never heard from him. It makes my heart lurch in a way I do not want it to. Why? I ask, so I can keep doing the work you never acknowledge. Because, he says, and stops. The man who can talk a room of investors into risking millions looks like a swimmer on the edge of cold water. Then he steps in, because I do not want to lose you. That is not a reason. I say, but my voice is not as firm as it was a minute ago. It is the only one that matters. He says, and then words spill from him in a way that feels reckless and impossible. He tells me he notices things, the way I hum when I am concentrating, the way I stack my notes in threes when I am nervous, the way I bring him coffee without asking when his meetings run late. He tells me he watches me challenge him in rooms where everyone else nods, and it makes him better. He tells me I scare him, not because I am loud, but because when I am near, he is not as much in control as he wants to be. My fingers tighten around the coffee cup. My brain tries to catch up with my heart and fails. Something wild and hot jumps in my chest. I do not trust it. I have built weeks and months of armor against this man. I have told myself stories about who he is, who I am, where the line lives. And now he is stepping over it with, I notice and you scare me and do not go. It is too much. I throw the coffee. I do not plan to. 1 second it is in my hand and the next it arcs through the air in a dark ribbon. The lid pops off and the liquid hits his shirt dead center. He freezes. Coffee drips down the white cotton, slides along the edge of his belt. My hand flies to my mouth. I am so sorry. I say, I did not mean to. He looks down at himself, then up at me. A sound leaves his chest. It is a laugh, not the polite kind, real and warm and stunned. It changes his face. It startles me so much I almost laugh too. No. He says, tugging loose his tie. You probably did mean to. I may have deserved it. You definitely did. I say before I can stop myself. And then I do laugh. He shakes his head and unbuttons his ruined shirt with unhurried hands. I try not to look at the line of his collarbone or the way his shoulders look under the thin undershirt. I succeed only a little. He pulls a clean shirt from the closet behind his desk, and when he turns back, his expression is not the one he wears in boardrooms. The edges have softened. He looks almost human. I meant what I said. He tells me, I do not want you to leave. Then why did you never say anything? I ask, why did you make it so hard to be a person here? Because I have been an idiot. He says, plain as that. I built a company by locking doors inside myself and calling it discipline. It worked until it did not. It stopped working the day I realized I was checking the time of your train when you were late and staying longer in rooms you were in and buying extra coffee because maybe you had forgotten breakfast again. I did not know what to do with that. I still do not. Not really. My mouth is dry. The room feels both too small and too big. The intercom on his desk crackles to life, and his assistant says that his 9 o'clock has arrived. He tells her to wait. She says they have flown in and are on a tight schedule. He tells her to wait anyway. I realize my hands have stopped shaking. I should go, I say, though I do not move. Not until I say what I should have said months ago. He says, he reaches into the top drawer of his desk, and for a foolish second, my mind flashes to images from movies. Grand gestures and music swelling. He takes out a small box. Velvet worn at the corners. My breath stutters. No. I say, Ethan. He opens it. The light catches on a ring that is lovely without being loud. A circle of promise that tilts the floor under my feet. He does not kneel. He does not turn this into a performance. He just stands there with the city behind him and the coffee stain drying on his belt and the patience of a man who has decided to risk everything. I have been carrying this for 2 weeks, he says, waiting for the right angle, the right moment, the perfect script. That is what I know how to do. Make plans, control outcomes, but there is no plan that makes sense of what you do to me. Emma, I do not just want you to stay at Night & Co. I want you to stay with me. I want to try to be a man who does not miss dinners, who listens before he decides, who learns how to say thank you and I am sorry and I need you without choking on the words. I want to build a life that is not just balance sheets and headlines. With you. The air thins. All my practice speeches crumble into dust. Logic rushes in with its lists. It says, this is sudden. It says, you do not say yes to a man who has made you feel invisible and then suddenly seen. It says, do not be foolish. It says, you came here to leave. But my heart, traitor that it is, remembers the nights I watched him stand alone after a win, like it cost him something. It remembers the way he softened when I mentioned my sister by name. It remembers how he always corrected my data slides with a note that was specific and fair and never cruel. It remembers how often I wished he would look up and see me. He is seeing me now. I look at the ring. I look at him. I hear myself laugh. Shaky and bright, like the sound belongs to someone else. You are lucky. I say that I did not have a full cup. His mouth curves. Does that mean maybe, he asks, it means I need to breathe. I say, it means I need a minute to remember my own name. Take the minute. He says, take as many as you want. I will wait. The city hums through the windows. The clock on the wall ticks. On the other side of the door, a meeting cools. Inside this room, time bends. I feel the weight of the envelope still on his desk, the heaviness of the weeks that led me here, the shock of the last 5 minutes. Under all that, something else stirs. It feels like a door opening in a hallway I thought was a dead end. I take a breath, I meet his eyes. Ethan, I say, and my voice is steady now. I am not saying yes in a rush because you are good with speeches. I am not saying yes because I am tired and it is easier than walking away. If I say yes, I am saying it because I believe you, because you will have to learn how to be the man you just promised to be, because I will hold you to it. He nods once, like a vow. So here's what I will say right now. I tell him, I am not walking out that door. Not yet. The ring stays in the box. The envelope stays on the desk. Between them is a space wide as a future. I used to think that once you said yes to someone, really yes, the hard part was over. Turns out that is when the real story begins. The morning after Ethan proposed, I woke up to sunlight spilling across his apartment floor and the city murmuring beneath us. It should have felt strange. Waking up in the CEO's bed, with his arm wrapped around me and the world outside still spinning at its usual speed. But it didn't. It felt terrifyingly normal. He stirred beside me, hair tousled, voice husky. Good morning, fiancé. Don't call me that. I mumbled, pressing my face into the pillow. It sounds insane. He laughed softly. Insane suits us. I wanted to argue, but instead, I laughed too, because he was right. Everything about us was insane. I walked into his office to quit, thrown coffee at him, and walked out engaged. Try explaining that to HR. By the time I got to the office that Monday, my stomach was a storm of nerves. We had agreed, or rather, I had insisted that we keep things quiet until we figured out what to do. He had nodded, reluctantly, his jaw tight. For now, I had said, for now, he repeated, though his eyes said he didn't like it one bit. Now, as I stepped out of the elevator, every sound seemed sharper. The tap of heels on marble, the hum of printers, the chatter that always died down when someone important walked by. No one knew, I told myself. No one could know. It was our secret, at least for now. Ethan's office door was slightly ajar. When I passed, for the first time since I'd started working there, I didn't walk in. I just kept going. The air between us felt fragile. Something new that needed time to breathe before we let the world touch it. But secrets, especially the good ones, have a way of slipping out. It started small, a glance too long when we passed in the hallway, a smile that didn't look professional enough, his assistant, Rachel, giving me a look that said she'd seen more than she was supposed to. Then whispers, the kind that start in the break room and end up on every floor by lunch. Did you see the way Knight looked at Emma? No way. He doesn't look at anyone like that. I heard she quit and came back the next day. I heard he bought her a ring. By Wednesday, I could feel the stares. By Friday, I was ready to crawl out of my own skin. That evening, Ethan stopped by my office after everyone had gone home. I was gathering files into neat piles that didn't need to be neat. He leaned against the door frame, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking unfairly calm. They're talking, aren't they? He asked. Talking would be an understatement. He walked in, closing the door behind him. Then let them talk. Easy for you to say. I snapped. They think I slept my way into your office. His eyes darkened. You didn't. I know that You know that, but to them, I'm just another story, and you're the man who finally proved the rumors about him were true. He crossed to me in 3 long strides. Do you regret it? The question hit me like a slap. What? Saying yes. No. I said immediately, then softer. Never. I just hate feeling like I have to apologize for it. He exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. Then we won't hide anymore. Ethan, no. Emma, I'm not letting a handful of whispers dictate what we do. You don't deserve that. I wanted to argue, but when he said my name, like that steady, certain something in me unclenched. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was time to stop pretending. The following Monday, we walked into the building together. It wasn't a grand gesture. He simply took my hand in the lobby and didn't let go. Heads turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. By the time we reached the executive floor, the rumor had become a headline. By noon, I had 3 missed calls from HR and a dozen curious emails from coworkers. But the real test came 2 days later, when Olivia Grant asked to see me. Olivia was the company's chief operating officer, elegant, brilliant, and terrifying. She'd known Ethan since the early days of Knight & Co. Long before the skyscraper and the billion-dollar deals, I'd always respected her, even envied her a little. But when I stepped into the small conference room she'd requested, the air felt like static. She stood by the window, arms crossed. So, it's true. I closed the door behind me. If you mean that Ethan and I are together, then yes, it's true. Her lips tightened. Do you realize how this looks? It looks like 2 adults in a relationship. I said, keeping my voice even, or it looks like a subordinate who saw an opportunity and took it. The words hit like a physical blow. Excuse me, I've known Ethan for 15 years. Olivia continued. It doesn't lose focus. He doesn't get involved with employees. Until you. I took a slow breath. You think I'm a distraction. I think you're dangerous for him, she said simply. Then you don't know him as well as you think. She turned, surprise flickering in her eyes. You see the CEO. I said, the man who builds empires and breaks records. But I see the man who stays in the office until 3 a.m. because he's terrified of failing. The man who buys lunch for the interns but makes Rachel pretend it came from petty cash. The man who hasn't called his father in 5 years because he's afraid of disappointing him again. Her expression softened just slightly. I stepped closer. He's not perfect. Neither am I. But I love him. Not his title. Not the company. Him. And I'm not going to apologize for that. Silence stretched between us, long and taut. Then Olivia sighed and looked away. You really do love him, with everything I have. I said. She rubbed a hand over her forehead. I misjudged you. I've seen people use him before. I didn't want that to happen again. It won't. I promised. When I left the room, my legs were shaking, but my heart felt strangely light. That night, I told Ethan about the conversation. He didn't say much, just pulled me close and whispered, "Thank you for fighting for me." 2 weeks later, he fought for me too. We were sitting on his couch surrounded by stacks of wedding catalogs I hadn't asked for when he looked up and said, "Let's make it official." Official as in, marry me soon. I laughed. Ethan, we haven't even told our families yet. He grinned. Then let's start there. The next morning, He called his mother. I called my sister. By the end of the week, we had a date, a venue, and more opinions than I knew what to do with. When I told him I wanted something simple, small, quiet, away from the noise, he nodded like he'd already planned it. There's a garden outside the city. He said, my mother used to take me there when I was a kid. It's peaceful. I already reserved it. You did what? He just smiled. That infuriatingly confident smile that used to make me roll my eyes in meetings. I had a feeling you'd agree. And damn it, I did. The wedding day came with clear skies and soft wind. The garden was a sea of white roses and ivy, the air scented with lavender. I stood at the edge of the path with my sister, heart hammering, hands trembling around a bouquet. When the music started, everything blurred. All I could see was him standing under the gazebo in a black suit, sunlight catching the gold in his hair, looking like the calm I'd been searching for my whole life. My father walked me down the aisle, and when he placed my hand in Ethan's, I felt the world narrow to just us. The officiant began to speak, but I barely heard. Ethan's eyes held mine, steady and full. When it was his turn, he cleared his throat, voice rough. Before you, I didn't believe in love. I thought it was a distraction, a weakness, but you proved me wrong. You showed me that love isn't about losing control. It's about finding someone worth being vulnerable for. And I will fight for you every day for the rest of my life. Tears spilled before I could stop them. My own vows came out shaky, but real. You once told me I scare you. I said, well, you scare me too. Because loving you means trusting you with every part of me, even the parts I don't like. But that's also the best thing I've ever done. When the officiant said, you may kiss the bride, he didn't hesitate. His kiss was soft and fierce and final. And when the guests erupted in applause, I barely heard it. Because in that moment, I wasn't thinking about the company, the whispers, or the risks. I was thinking about how something that started in an office full of fluorescent light had turned into this sunlight. Laughter, love. As we walked down the aisle, hand in hand, petals raining around us, I glanced at Ethan and smiled. Still think we're insane? He asked. Completely. I said, but maybe that's exactly what we needed to be. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. People love to say that marriage changes everything. I used to roll my eyes at that. I thought love was love sign papers, or not. But when you marry your boss, everything changes twice as fast and twice as loud. The first morning, I walked into Knight & Co. as Emma Knight. I thought I was ready. I told myself nothing would be different. Same job, same people, same coffee machine that always made everything taste burnt. I even left my wedding ring at home that day, just to make a point. But the whispers started before I even reached my desk. Mrs. Knight. Guess that's one way to climb the ladder. Must be nice never having to worry about performance reviews. I pretended not to hear. But each word felt like a tiny cut. Ethan, of course, seemed unfazed. He moved through the halls like usual, confident, calm, unreadable. If the comments bothered him, he didn't show it. But when I got home that night and slammed my bag on the counter, he looked up from his laptop immediately. Rough day, you could say that. I muttered, kicking off my heels. He closed his laptop. Talk to me. I tried to brush it off, but the words poured out anyway, every whisper, every sideways glance. Every person who suddenly treated me like I hadn't earned a single thing, they think I'm just Mrs. Knight now. I said, my throat tight, not Emma Carter, not the one who worked her way up, just your wife. He came around the counter, his hand brushing my arm. You are my wife. That's not the point. Ethan, I know, he said softly. You worked too hard to be reduced to a title. I swallowed. Exactly. He was quiet for a long moment. His brow furrowed the way it gets when he's planning something big. Then he said, let me handle it. Handle it how I asked warily. You'll see. 2 days later, I found out what he meant. It started with an all-staff meeting, the kind where people from every floor crammed into the glass auditorium, coffee cups in hand, waiting for another quarterly pep talk. I didn't even know why I'd been invited. Ethan stepped up to the podium. He didn't look at notes. He never needed them. Good morning, he began, his voice filling the room. Before we start, there's something I need to address. The murmurs quieted. There have been discussions, he continued, about my relationship with Emma. Every head turned toward me. I wanted to disappear into the carpet. Yes, he said simply, Emma and I are married. And yes, it began while we worked together. But before she was my wife, she was one of the most talented, hardest working people in this company. Her ideas shaped some of our biggest campaigns. Her dedication helped us land the Morgan account and expand internationally. She earned her place here long before she ever shared a last name with me. A stunned silence filled the room. He paused, then added, and for anyone who thinks otherwise, my door is open, though I suggest you bring evidence, not gossip. Then, before anyone could react, he said, now, let's talk about innovation in Q3. For a long moment, no one moved. Then someone started clapping. Another joined. Within seconds, the entire room was on its feet. My eyes blurred as Ethan's found mine across the room. He didn't smile, not really, but there was something in his gaze that said, I told you I'd handle it. When the meeting ended, I slipped out before the crowd could reach me. I was still shaking when he caught up to me in the hallway. You didn't have to do that. I said, yes, I did. He replied, I won't let anyone take credit away from what you've earned. Still, it was risky. I said, you just told 400 people to mind their own business. He smiled faintly. Good. Maybe they'll finally start doing it. That night, I fell asleep in his arms, feeling something I hadn't in weeks, peace. But peace, I would learn, never last long. Over the next few months, things slowly improved. The whispers faded. My team started to trust me again, realizing I hadn't changed my standards, if anything. I pushed harder. Ethan and I found our rhythm. At work, we were colleagues, professional, polite, sometimes even distant. At home, we were learning what it meant to be partners, not just lovers. He'd cook dinner while I handled late-night reports. We'd argue about the dishwasher. He loaded it like an engineer. I loaded it like a human. We learned that love wasn't all grand gestures and passionate kisses. Sometimes it was silence and patience. Sometimes it was choosing to listen instead of win. And then one morning, everything changed again. It started with nausea, the kind that comes in waves, quiet at first, then unstoppable. I spent an entire week blaming stress before I finally went to the pharmacy on my lunch break. When the second pink line appeared, I just stared, pregnant. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, heart racing so hard I could hear it in my ears. We hadn't even talked about kids yet. Sure, it had come up once or twice. In the vague, someday kind of way people mention when they're too busy living to think about what comes next. But someday had apparently arrived without warning. That evening, Ethan came home early, which was rare enough to make me suspicious. You okay? He asked. Fine, I said too quickly. He narrowed his eyes. You've been saying that a lot lately. Maybe because I'm fine. He crossed the room, his gaze gentle but firm. Emma, I froze. He only said my name like that when he was worried. I took a deep breath, pulled the test from my pocket, and held it out. You tell me if this looks fine. He blinked, then looked down at it. His expression went utterly blank. Are you? Yes, I whispered. I'm pregnant. For what felt like forever, he didn't move. Then his eyes widened, and the tiniest, disbelieving laugh escaped him. We're having a baby, I nodded. We're having a baby. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing in a circle. Oh my God. A baby. We're having a baby. Ethan, he suddenly turned, scooped me up, and spun me around. We're having a baby. I burst out laughing, half terrified, half overjoyed. When he finally set me down, his eyes were glassy, his voice thick. I'm going to be a dad. He whispered, almost to himself, you sound surprised. I am, in the best way. He looked at me like I was something fragile and miraculous. Emma, I didn't think I could ever deserve this. Deserve what us, a family. Tears pricked my eyes. I pressed my forehead against his, then consider it your second chance. He smiled that soft, unguarded smile that belonged only to me and kissed me until the world felt steady again. That night, as we lay in bed, his hand rested on my stomach like he was afraid to move it. Hey, he murmured, little one, go easy on your mom. Okay, I laughed through my tears. You're already talking to them. Someone has to make a good first impression. I realized then that maybe marriage really did change everything, because in that quiet, trembling moment, as his fingers brushed my skin and our future stretched before us like something fragile and infinite, I understood this was just the beginning. Pregnancy looks magical on Instagram, soft lighting, glowing smiles, hands on round bellies. Reality, not so much. By week 6, I was throwing up twice before breakfast and once after. By week 8, I cried because we ran out of pickles. By week 10, Ethan started hovering like a mother hen on espresso. You need to eat something, he said one morning, holding out a plate of toast. If you shove that near me, I'll throw it at your head. I mumbled from the couch. Cocooned in a blanket. He grinned. You have an alarming habit of throwing things at me. Only when you deserve it. He sat beside me and brushed a stray strand of hair from my face. I'm just worried about you. I know, I said softly, leaning into his touch. But I'm fine. I promise. You're not fine. You threw up 3 times this morning. That's normal. It's horrifying, he countered. I reached for his hand and placed it gently on my stomach. We're fine. I whispered. His expression melted. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to where his hand rested. Hey, little one, go easy on your mom. Okay, something about the way he said it cracked me open. Tears welled up. Uninvited? Emma, he asked. Panicked. What did I say? I laughed. Sniffling. Nothing. You're just gonna be such a good dad. His eyes softened. I hope so. You will be. I said, meaning it. As the months passed, my belly grew and so did Ethan's protective instincts. He started showing up to every doctor's appointment, asking 1,000 questions about vitamins and heart rates, as if our baby's safety depended on a quarterly report. One afternoon, I caught him sitting cross-legged on the nursery floor, surrounded by manuals and unassembled crib parts. His brow furrowed, screwdriver in hand. Do you need help? I asked from the doorway. No, he said, adjusting a screw. Maybe. I bit back a laugh and joined him on the floor. You're reading the instructions upside down. He frowned. They're poorly written. They're perfectly fine. He said, handing them to me. Fine. You do it. Together, we finished the crib an hour later, slightly crooked, but standing. Ethan placed a small stuffed bear inside and exhaled like he'd just conquered a merger. It looks perfect. I said, everything's perfect. He replied, slipping an arm around me. We sat there in silence for a while, just breathing in the quiet. Then I whispered, a year ago, I almost quit my job and walked away from you. He smiled against my hair. Best decision you never made. I smiled back. Best one I never made. When labor came, it was 3 a.m, the kind of still, black quiet that makes the world feel like it's holding its breath. 1 minute I was dreaming of sunlight, the next, my water broke all over our sheets. Ethan shot upright. What's happening? What do I do? Do I call someone hospital? I groaned through a contraction. We need to go to the hospital. He leapt out of bed, tripping over the rug. Where's the bag? Where are your shoes? Do we have time for coffee, Ethan? Calm down. He ran both hands through his hair. Calm down. You're in labor. You're supposed to be the calm one. I don't feel calm. I laughed through the pain. You're not the one having the baby. He froze, blinked, then nodded solemnly. Good point. We made it to the hospital in record time, mostly because Ethan ignored half the traffic laws. 12 hours later, I was gripping his hand hard enough to break it. You're doing amazing, he said, voice tight with worry. You did this to me. I gasped through a contraction. I know. I'm sorry. You're lucky. I love you. I know that too. When I finally heard our baby's cry, sharp and strong and real, the world snapped into focus. It's a girl, the doctor said, placing the tiny bundle on my chest. I looked down at her pink, wrinkled, perfect. Hi, sweetheart. Ethan stood frozen beside the bed, eyes wide, lips parted in awe. She's ours. She's ours. I whispered. He reached out a trembling finger and touched her hand. She wrapped her tiny fist around it, and I saw his entire heart collapse and rebuild in the same breath. She's holding my hand. He whispered, she likes you. He laughed, tears spilling freely. I love her. I love her so much. Me too. I said, and I meant it in a way I'd never meant anything before. We named her Lila Grace Knight Lila because it was soft and strong at once, and Grace because she felt like one. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and quiet miracles. Ethan learned how to change diapers with military precision. He read baby manuals at 3 a.m. while I fed Lila. His eyes half closed but determined. One night, I woke up to find the nursery light on. I padded to the doorway and froze. Ethan was pacing the room in pajama pants, Lila cradled against his chest, humming softly a tune I'd never heard but instantly loved. "She's got your stubbornness," he murmured to her, "and your nose." I whispered from the door. He smiled, tired but radiant. "You should sleep." I said quietly, "right here, later." I found him asleep in the rocking chair, Lila curled on his chest, both of them snoring softly. I took a picture, one I still look at when life gets loud, and thought, this is everything. 3 months later, I returned to work. It felt surreal stepping back into the building that had once been my battleground. Now it felt like stepping onto another planet. I missed Leela every second. Ethan had cut his hours to stay home more. "You don't have to," I told him one night. "Yes, I do," he said, rocking Lila gently. "I built this company from the ground up, but I'm not missing her grow up. You'll go stir crazy. I'll learn the alphabet song instead of quarterly reports," he said with a grin. "It's a fair trade." I watched him with Lila and realized he wasn't just a good husband or a good CEO. He was becoming the kind of father I didn't know existed. One evening, we took Lila to the park. The sun dipped low, painting the sky gold. Lila was barely sitting up, bundled in a blanket, her eyes wide at the sight of trees moving in the wind. Ethan crouched beside her, pointing, "That's the sky," he said, as if she could understand. "And that's a bird. And that is a very proud dad." I teased, sitting next to him. He smiled, turning toward me. "I never thought I'd have this a life," he said simply. "Not just success, not just goals. You, her, us." I reached for his hand. "You built more than a company. Ethan, you built a family." He squeezed my hand, eyes glistening in the fading light. "With a little help from you." That night, as I put Lila to bed, I whispered a promise I hadn't planned. "I'll never forget this." I told her, "The nights, the noise, the love, you're the best thing I've ever done." Ethan wrapped his arms around me from behind. "You're the best thing I've ever done," he murmured into my hair. And standing there, our daughter sleeping between us, our lives tangled in a way I never thought possible. I realized that beginnings never look like they do in stories. They don't come with fireworks or fanfare. They start quietly, in the middle of chaos, with the sound of someone you love whispering, "We're in this together." And that's exactly what we were together. Learning, changing, beginning again, 10 years. Sometimes it feels like a blink, sometimes like a lifetime. The night of Knight & Co.'s 20th anniversary gala, I stood near the edge of the ballroom watching light ripple across crystal chandeliers. Laughter and champagne filled the air. And somewhere in the crowd, a string quartet played the same melody Ethan had chosen for our wedding. The scent of lilies, my favorite, drifted in from the floral displays that lined the stage. I smoothed the emerald silk of my dress, the one Ethan insisted matched my eyes, and glanced down at the smaller version beside me. "Do you think anyone will notice we're twins?" my daughter asked, twirling in her matching emerald gown. "Completely identical," I said, smiling, "except one of us eats ice cream for dinner when Daddy isn't looking." "Guilty," Lila giggled, her 10-year-old grin bright enough to outshine the chandeliers. "Can I go find Daddy now?" she asked. "He's probably charming investors." I said, "But stay where I can see you." "Yes." Mom, she sighed with dramatic flair. Before skipping off into the crowd, a flash of green silk and untamed curls that made my heart swell and ache all at once. I watched her weave through the guests toward Ethan, who was exactly where I expected, surrounded by people in tuxedos, commanding attention without trying. He bent down as Lila tugged his sleeve, and when she smiled up at him, the hardened CEO melted into someone softer, someone only we knew, Emma Knight. A familiar voice called from behind me. I turned to find Olivia Grant, glass of champagne in hand, looking as effortlessly composed as ever. Olivia, I said warmly, it's been too long, far too long. She replied, smiling, you look incredible. So do you? I said, meaning it. Her once sharp demeanor had softened over the years, but her eyes were still sharp enough to see through anyone. We stood side by side, watching the crowd, hard to believe. Isn't it, she murmured. 10 years ago, this company was half its size, and you and Ethan were throwing coffee and resignation letters at each other. I finished. She laughed, the sound genuine. Exactly. Feels like another lifetime. She took a sip of champagne, then said, I owe you an apology. For what? For doubting you. She said, when you and Ethan first got together, I was convinced it would end in disaster. I thought you were a distraction, but I was wrong. You've been good for him. Her words caught me off guard. Thank you, I said quietly. She smiled, tapping her glass gently against mine. To second chances. To second chances. I echoed. Across the room, Ethan was giving Lila a piggyback ride, her laughter echoing above the music. I felt warmth spread through me, that deep, quiet kind that only comes from knowing you've survived the storm and found peace on the other side. When it was time for speeches, Ethan took the stage. He set Lila down, ruffling her hair before stepping up to the microphone. Thank you all for being here tonight. He began. 20 years ago, I started Night Co. With nothing but an idea and too much stubbornness. The crowd laughed softly. Since then, we've grown beyond anything I could have imagined. But tonight isn't about numbers or achievements. It's about the people who made it all possible, the employees who gave their best every day, the investors who believed when no one else did, and the family who reminded me why any of this matters. His gaze found mine across the room. My breath caught. 10 years ago, he continued. A very smart, very brave woman walked into my office and told me I was impossible to work for. She quit on the spot or tried to. That moment changed everything. It made me realize success isn't about control or perfection. It's about connection, about finding someone who challenges you to be better. The room was utterly still. He smiled then, that small, private smile that belonged only to me. So if you take anything from tonight, let it be this. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is getting coffee thrown at your chest. Laughter rippled through the audience. I felt tears sting my eyes. To my wife, Emma, he said softly, thank you for teaching me what love actually means, and for never letting me forget that it's the one thing worth building above everything else. Applause erupted, thunderous and genuine. Lila bounced on her heels, clapping harder than anyone. That's Mommy, she shouted proudly. Ethan laughed, scooping her into his arms. That's right, sweetheart. When the applause died down, he stepped off the stage and came straight to me. I shook my head. smiling through tears. You're gonna make me cry in public. Good, he said, pulling me close. You deserve it. I didn't do anything. You did everything, he whispered, kissing my forehead. Later, as the music swelled, Lila tugged on Ethan's hand. Can we dance now? He grinned. What do you say, Mrs. Night care to join us always? We stepped onto the dance floor, the three of us swaying to the same song we danced to on our wedding night. Around us, people moved and laughed and toasted, but I only saw Ethan's smile and Lila's tiny hand curled around his thumb. This is perfect. Lila sighed contentedly. Ethan met my eyes over her head. Yeah, he said softly. It really is. When the night wound down, we found ourselves on the balcony overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered, reflections of 1,000 windows glowing like stars. Can you believe it's been 10 years? I asked. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. Feels like yesterday. And a lifetime ago, any regrets? He pressed a kiss to my shoulder. Only that I didn't tell you how I felt sooner. I turned in his arms, smiling. Better late than never. Much better, he murmured, kissing me gently. We stood there for a long time, saying nothing, just breathing the same air, feeling the same steady heartbeat between us. Through the open doors behind us, I could hear Lila giggling with the other children, the sound pure and bright. I closed my eyes and let it sink in the laughter. The love, the life we had built from chaos and chance, it hadn't been easy. There were fights, fears, and sleepless nights. There were days when the world seemed too big and we seemed too small. But through it all, we kept choosing each other. Every single time, I turned to look at Ethan, at the man who'd once terrified me, challenged me, loved me in ways I didn't know I needed. The man I'd thrown coffee at and somehow ended up building a family with. Hey, I said softly. He looked down. Thank you. For what? For being you. For loving me. For giving me this life. He smiled, brushing his thumb across my cheek. Thank you for throwing that coffee. I laughed. Best decision I ever made. Mine too, he said, pulling me close. And as the city lights shimmered around us and the faint sound of our daughter's laughter drifted through the night, I realized something simple and true. Life isn't perfect. It never will be. But it's ours. And that's more than enough.